79 years ago. And on January 13th of 1943, the world lost another valued life and mind. A brilliant mind who promoted ethics and morals. A woman who was a talented writer and a great entrepreneur. A woman who was ahead of her time in every aspect. Else Ury was a Jewish German writer who lost her life in Auschwitz concentration camp. Else Ury was born in Berlin on the 1st of November 1877, into a family of Jewish merchants. Growing up in the Victorian era, and while her father became a successful merchant, her parents provided the environment and inspiration to write her books. The prosperous life, with many details including impressive furniture, which is described by Else Ury in her Nesthäkchen series in 1906, is a direct reflection of her happy childhood life in Berlin, Germany. Else's mother, Franziska Ury, passed her interest in classic and modern literature, the arts, and music on to her children. Also, her mother represented the German Bildungsbürgertum, which also referred to as German educated middle class. In 1905, and at the age of 28, Else published her first book. It was called What the Lucky Child Heard. This elite collection of 38 moral tales stories promotes pedagogical ideals such as loyalty, honesty, and faithfulness. The Nesthäkchen series, which translates to Baby of the Family, started to be published on 1918, and continued until 1925. The Nesthäkchen series made Else Ury one of the most famous authors in Germany and Europe. The combination of an educated mind, humor and compassionate femininity made her books into bestsellers. Else Ury's writing made her rich. Not by an inheritance from the successful merchant father, but from her own earnings. Despite her massive success, Else Ury lived quietly and humbly. With money from her books, and in 1926, Else Ury bought a vacation house in Krumobel, Poland, which she named as House Nesthäkchen. The main purpose of buying this house was for Else to spend vacation time with her family, and extended family in it. As her popularity grew, and as the Nazis rose to power, in Else Ury's last book, Youth to the Fore, which was published in 1933, the author tried to put a good face on Hitler's rise to power. The book dealt with overcoming the economic crisis and unemployment, restoring order with a firm hand, and strengthening Germany. No one is certain whether Ury was politically naive and had been seduced by Nazi propaganda, or whether her publisher, to please the regime, had obediently altered the text. Unfortunately for Else Ury, things started to fall apart after Nazis rising to power. As a Jew, Else Ury was excluded from the Reich Chamber of Writers in 1935, which meant she was no longer allowed to publish. By 1936, most of her relatives had emigrated. And in 1937, her brother Hans had committed suicide. Else Ury made the crucial choice not to leave Germany, as she had to care for her 90-year-old mother. Her mother died in 1940. Things didn't get any better as World War II started. As in 1939, Else Ury was forced to move to a Jew house, where the Jews were collected for deportation. On January of 1943, she had to fill out a declaration of all her possessions and sign a release, turning over all her property to the Nazis. German officials proceeded to sell off everything she owned. The day had arrived, and on January 12, 1943, the 65-year-old Else Ury was taken to the railroad station at Berlin, along with 1,190 other Berlin Jews. And with one suitcase and a few articles of clothing, Else Ury started the long and painful trip in the cattle cart to the concentration camp. The condition inside the cattle cart can simply be described as inhumane. With up to a 100-person in each cart, no ventilation and no sewer system, made the deportation an extreme condition for the victims. Upon arrival to Auschwitz, the selection process had started. The selection took place by the SS doctors. And it was based on the ability of the victims of performing forced labor. Children and women had a slight to none chance of surviving, because of their less abilities of performing hard labor. Out of the 1,190 person were deported to Auschwitz that day. SS doctors selected only 127 men from Else Ury's transport for labor. Else Ury and every woman and child on that transportation were sent to immediate death in the gas chamber. Many of the victims that day didn't know that they are going to die until it was too late. Although Else Ury's life was filled with outstanding achievements, she suffered major losses in her life. Started from the Nazis banning her writings, to the loss of her brother, Hans, who committed suicide, to her family fleeing Germany, the loss of all of her possessions, to finally, the loss of her own life. Even though Else Ury's story seems like stories of millions of victims who suffered in the Nazis' concentration camp, it is unique in terms of how she enriched the German society with her writings. And instead of getting awarded for her work, her life was taken away. German public television produced the Nesthäkchen series as a 1983 Christmas show. Else's work continues to live on and affect millions of children's lives until today with her writings. Else's legacy of loyalty and ethics will live on.